Hello, this is Robert Parker. This is my presentation to challenge to solve Daniel 8, 13, and 14. I hold to the premillennial view, which I call beyond pre-wrath, which claims that believers will not be raptured until after Satan's great tribulation, though before the blown trumpets, specifically the rapture occurring for the elect in Revelation 8:5. This is different from the pre-wrath view, which has the interpretation that the rapture with the Revelation 7, that the multitude in heaven would be their rapture. It has similarities to the pre-wrath view. Again, we both look at the Revelation 7, multitude in heaven rejoicing as being a multitude rejoicing in heaven. But again, I have that Revelation 6, 7, and 8 are not chronological, and there's other things. I'm looking at the rapture occurring first here, and then the consequence of this would be the Revelation 7, that multitude rejoicing in heaven, and then the Revelation 6, verses 6 and 7, where verse 7 is the same day wrath of God with that reference to fire there. So those three verses, 5, 6, and 7, would all be on the same day as Jesus prophesies with Lot and Noah, where the righteous were saved on the same day that the wicked were destroyed. Okay, so that's the parallel I'm showing, which is unique. There's not another premillennial view which has all three of these events occurring only 3 verses apart from each other. But yet, so that's a simplistic view. Let's keep going. So the challenge is to solve Daniel 8, 13 to 14. And this is in reference to 2 holy ones. The first holy one asks the question, and the second holy one in verse 14 answers it. We know all scripture is exact, since both the question and the answer will be shown to have exact durations of time. We can therefore, if you will, quote unquote, solve this formed equation of equality. Okay. And here's the scripture below. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, "For how long is the vision concerning?" And this vision concerning is made up of 3 parts. I call Q1, Q2, Q3, for Q is just for question. The regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate is Q2, and then Q3 is the giving over of the sanctuary to the host to be trampled underfoot. Okay, so all 3 of these conditions have to be met, and then the answer is in here in verse 14. And he said to me, "For 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary shall be restored to its rightful state." Okay. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so we basically start looking at this as an equation that, in hindsight, I know that can be solved. When I first saw this, it was actually my Wednesday night eschatology, who's a Baptist, a Southern Baptist teacher I was in the class. He sent me an email, and he knew I was a retired engineer. He said, "Solve this." And I looked at it, I couldn't do anything with it. And then like a week or 2 later, I looked at it, and I started slowly over the next, I don't know what, say week or 2 or so, week or 10 days, I started pulling together all the different threads. and I got to the point where I solved it, and I showed it to him. So he was impressed. So this is the first liner. The question of Daniel 8:13 equals the answer. It's made up of how long is a vision. Like I said, it's made up of 3 parts: Q1, Q2, Q3. And then the 2300 evenings and mornings for the rightful sanctuary, for the sanctuary to be restored to its rightful state. Now, as we go through here, we will let Scripture interpret Scripture. And for example, for how long is a vision for Q1, Q2, Q3, we will let the Scripture give us the answer. As ironic as that seems, I didn't know that when I was going through this. I had no idea I could ever, if you will, again, quote unquote, solve this. But I will show that the Bible answers the questions, these 3 questions being asked by the first Holy One in 8:13. Now on the right side, we have to, this has got to be expanded. I mean, what is clear is the 2300 evenings and mornings, but what is not completely evident at first glance is that there are actually 2 parts that make up this right side of the equation. And this second part will become an unknown. And since we have 1 equation and 1 unknown, we can solve for this one unknown. Once we solve for this unknown, it becomes evident that we have to formulate a second equation, which will allow us to solve or bound the duration of the 6th open seal. And this is somewhat of a hint itself here. Call it hint number 1. Okay. All right, let's keep going. So anytime as we go through this, you can stop, and I'll let you know. You can take a minute or 2 or a day or 2 and think and contemplate on trying to solve this before I walk through these slides and solve it for you. Okay, here's hint 2, the left side of the equation for Q1, Q2 can be found in the book of Daniel. When you find the answer to Q1, you will find the answer to Q2. For the answer to Q3, you have to use the book of Revelation. Of these 3 answers, we will need to use the longest duration of the 3. Okay, and I'll actually have a proof. I'll talk about this later. We get more specific in here. Okay, hint 3, the right side of the equation, which is the second Holy One answering the first Holy One question. It needs to be expanded excuse me, into 2 parts, which is more challenging. It must be determined before the second equation could be formulated. We have to know what we're once we figure out what we're solving for and solve it, then that'll lead us immediately to the second equation. Okay. You need to ask yourself, is there something in general which would prevent the priests from doing their duties? Okay. All right. So you want to stop here. You're just focusing on, you're focusing on the entire book of Daniel, entire book of Revelation. So, that's quite a bit of reading. So, anyway, so we're going to go to the next slide. So here we go. Next hint. Hint 4. Okay, for the right side of the first equation, the answers to Q1 and Q2 can be found in Daniel chapter 12. Of course, there's only 12 chapters, so I'm telling which of the 12 to focus on, and Q3 can be found in the Revelation 11, in which there's 22 chapters. So at this point, this is a good time to break. I would say this hint, you can read these 2 chapters and then, again, focus on Q1, focus on finding Q1. Once you find Q1, you'll find Q2 when you do your search engine find. So you should be able to find this. Hint 4 pretty much tells you the left side of the equation in days. Okay. But we still have the dilemma with the right side of the equation with the evenings and mornings. And so that's the other thought, and we'll be getting into that in another few slides here. So here we go. We're going to go to the next hint, unless you want to break. All right, hint 5. The right side of the first equation, consider the priest's sacrifices can only be done when there is priestly light. But maybe I should put that in quotes or something. I don't know. Oops. Let's call that in quotes. This will help in expanding the right side of the first equation. Okay. So tough. It's a bit more tough. It took me a while to kind of figure that right side of the equation out. What that other part is. Okay. But here we go. We're going to go to the next slide. So I hinted on this, the 2300 evenings and mornings. We're trying to, I saw this using this equation using the units and days. Okay, I guess you can use evenings and mornings to work that. Of course the challenge here is how many days are 2300 evenings and mornings? Okay. When I was going through this, I considered the expanded Bible version. And here's the scripture. The angel said to me, this will happen for 2300 evenings and mornings. And what's important is that it adds, for their clarification to the scripture, is it's either going to be 2300 or 1150 days. So they were not adamant. There are at least 2 translations. I'll let you figure out which ones, but they were adamant that it was one of these 2. But I don't want to be adamant. I want to let Scripture interpret Scripture. And we will be able to let Scripture exclude one of these 2 dates. It will become extremely evident. Okay. Then the Holy One, the holy place sanctuary will be repaired and restored to its and made right again. Okay, so anyway, this is where we're at, and we'll go to the next slide, and I think we're solving the left side of the equation, I think, on the next 2 slides. Here we go, hint 7, so here we go, the next 2 slides, this slide and the next, we're solving the left side of the equation, which will become 1,335 days, of which Q1 and Q2 will be shown to be 1335 days, here in Daniel. So these are the 2 verses I walked you guys through, to the book and then the chapter within the book, and here are the verses. Okay. Q3 is 1260 days in Revelation 11:2, and we will have to use the longest and of these. In my slide 11, 3 more slides in here, I've got the proof. It shows that it has to be the 1335. It cannot be interpreted as the 1290. Okay. And this is in my book. This is, I've got 2 premises in my book, which, again, I'm a retired engineer, so 2 of the premises involve numbers, which I call it a proof. Okay. When I formulated all this, I had the 5 or 6 premises. So anyway, here's a question. For how long is the vision concerning? And we're focusing on this slide on Q1 and Q2. The Q1 is the regular burnt offering, which I told you guys to focus on. And let's skip down here to Daniel 12, and you'll see it says regular burnt offering. So it's word for word exactly the same. So if you'd have done a word search, you would have found the answer in the Bible. That would have been pretty quick. I'm not sure if there's another reference in the Bible to regular burnt offering, but you wouldn't have found too many more. And that would have led you to, in that scripture, to these 2 numbers, to the 1290 and the 1335 days, okay, of which we use the longer of 1335, which again, I'm going to show a proof here on slide 11 that it has to be interpreted as a 1335. And then the second part here, the Q2, this first Holy One is asking saying the transgression that makes it desolate for this vision concerning. It's not word for word the same here in Daniel 12:11, abomination that makes desolate, but the thought is, we would all agree it's just basically the same. Okay. So this gives us the answers Q1 and Q2. It's 1335. The next slide we have Q3. Let's go there. All right, this is Q3, which is in bold. This is First Holy Ones. This is saying how long is the vision concerning the giving over of the sanctuary and host to be trampled underfoot. And this is found here in Revelation 11:2. This is the verse. Okay, they will trample the holy city for 42 months. Of course, we know a month is 30 days for Scripture. So 42 times 30 is 1,260 days, of which the longer is the 1335. Okay, but again, I'll show the proof that it's got to be 1335. So there's a couple of proofs I'm going to be showing you here in the next several slides. So let's keep going. So now we're going to form and solve the first equation. So basically, we plugged in the 1335. We just calculated from Q1, Q2, Q3. This is the longest of the two. We didn't want to be adamant, so we used the Expansion Bible version, which said it could be this or it could be that. And then we're adding in this is darkness. Okay, we're adding in the priestly darkness. This is priestly light. So basically what we're doing is from the middle of the 70th week of Daniel, when that abomination of desolation happens, we're referring to the Matthew 24 verses 15 and 16, which refers to the prophet Daniel, which is explicitly referencing Daniel 9:27, with that midpoint being when the abomination of desolation happens, which I call the midpoint as being day one. So that's what the Holy Ones are referring to. Is they're talking to day one, when this prince, this Antichrist, does the abomination of desolation at the temple. We would certainly anticipate that the Jewish priests would no longer be able to do their twice daily temple sacrifices. So that's when these dates, this duration of time kicks in. We're counting all the days from that midpoint, from that day one until the day 1335. And this day 1335 is when the millennium starts with the temple. Okay, so we need to count all the days of darkness from day one to day 1335. Now, what we see immediately when we plug in this entire, all of this, we've bits and pieces we pulled together, is that the 2300 days that we cannot interpret this Daniel 8:14 as 2300 days. Okay, so because we're talking equality here, you know, the entire Bible is exact. Okay, so the question of verse 13 has to exactly equal the answer of verse 14, because darkness has to be positive, okay, or at least zero. Okay, I'll show it's a positive number, but it can't be negative. So therefore, this excludes this interpretation. Okay. So again, we're letting the Bible interpret the Bible. This is we don't have to say, you know, how did we equate, you know, Hebrew into English? You know, there's none of that. We're using you're letting Scripture interpret Scripture here, okay? Because we didn't want to be adamant. We didn't want to be adamant and force fitting this to the number of days. We won't, you know, and this allows us to get there. I didn't know that exactly when I was going through this, but I had to pull together a lot of different thoughts. But it's very evident at this point, and the proof is also in premise 4, page 58 of chapter 4 of my Beyond Pre-Wrath End Time Prophecy book. It's in there too. But this is pretty straightforward. It's very simple, straightforward. Anyway, we solved this equation using the 1150. Taking that from 1335, we get 185 days. Okay, so immediately we know this is the answer to the first equation with the two holy ones, and so this leads us to a second equation, because we know that from this midpoint, abomination, desolation at day 1 until day 1335. There are several events that occur during that time where there is 24-hour darkness. Okay, because because this 1150 is the priestly light, right? This is and if they don't have light during the day, which I call, if we will call priestly darkness, 24-hour darkness, then because they use the sun, whether it's rising in the morning or if it's before it sets. Okay, and that determines when they do their animal and grain sacrifices. So if you have 24-hour darkness, then they cannot do a temple sacrifice. Okay, so you have to, for continuity, for all the days from day 1 to day 1335, we have to include both the priestly light and the priestly darkness. Okay, so now the next slide is we're getting into trying to solve the darkness. How long, all the events during the darkness, and that'll lead us to solving the 6th open seal. So let's go next slide. So now we're formulating this. Like I said, darkness equals 185. We know the 6th open seal is darkness. That's in Revelation 6 verse 12, and it's parallel in Matthew 24, 29. Okay. Plus there are 4 other unknowns, okay? And this first unknown, on the next slide or two, I'll show you what this is. This is a big number relative to the 185 days. The other 3, U2, U3, U4, these are smaller numbers. I'm not going to calculate them in this presentation. You have to read my book. And then once we do that, this is going to set on the high side the maximum amount duration of the 6th open seal. In my book, I set what the low side is. The low side here is, I don't say it, so you could say it's, I guess 0 would be the max, but there's, it's going to be, the low side is higher than 0 days. Okay. So again, we're calculating from day 1, middle of the 70th week, abomination to desolation, until when the millennium begins on day 1335, and during this time, we're looking at the different segments. Basically, the seals 5 to 7, the trumpets 1 to 7, and then the poured bowls 1 to 7. There are, I don't know of any known days from when the 7th bowl, see the 7th bowl ends on day 1290, so from day 1291 until when the millennium begins, I don't know of any known days of darkness. So the ones here, which I highlighted in bold, those are the ones you're focusing on and determining the duration of well, all of this stuff here. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, another hint. U1, which is the largest unknown of the 4. Let's see. U1 time duration could be found in Revelation 9. That's the hint. So short chapters. So if you want to take another break, you should be able to determine what the duration of this 24-hour darkness duration is in Revelation 9. So, all right, I'm going to the next slide. I'm going to show you what the answer is. It's in Revelation 9:5. It's the 5th trumpet. It's 5 months or 150 days. And these are all the scriptures here. You can come back and read those. But let's keep going. So here we just plug in the 150 days. Actually, I need to be consistent here. Oops. This is the, oh my gosh. This is unknown 2, unknown 3, and unknown 4. Unknown 4. See if I can copy these things in quick. Oops. No, it doesn't allow me to copy. So, hang on for a second here. All right, there we go. Oops. All right. Yeah, presentation 4 with septic slides provides sense as to which of the seals, trumpet, and balls to look out for their 3 remaining unknown darknesses, or you can just read my book. Therefore, the 6th open seal must be 35 days, right here. This is 35 days. Whatever the minus of these numbers, we know they're positive, so it's going to have to be a max of 35 days on the high side. This is a new historic understanding. I mean, Book of Revelation was written about 95, 96 AD, so we're talking over 1,900 years. I'm not aware of anyone who has ever proposed the duration, or bounding at least, the duration of the 6th open seal. And I've also bound, I'm not talking about, I'm not going to get into details here, but the rapture is once we leave the darkness of the 6th open seal, which will last for however long, a max of 35 days, we will have to enter the days of light, like we have right now, day, night, as there turns on its axis. And this gets into, because there has to be light, because when Jesus prophesies, it's in Luke, I think it's, oh my gosh, I think it's Luke 17. Oh, let me quickly get that. It's in Luke 17. Luke 17, 22, I think. ESV version. So if we can quickly get there. Yep. Okay. Because in 28 it says that there's going to be planning and building. Planning and building is done during daylight. You can't have, and this is in reference to with the verse 24, for as lightning flashes and lights up the sky from one side to the other, so will the Son of Man be in his day. He's talking about his second return. Okay, so there cannot be a rapture as the pre-wrath have in the 6th open seal, because that's darkness, right? Revelation 6:12, like I said, and parallel Matthew 24:29 are parallel with their 24-hour darkness, sun, blood, moon, stars. You can't have a rapture because you got to have planning and building. And what's the next event after the 6th open seal? It's the 7th open seal. So by deduction, the 7th open seal must be what I call in my book, for my graphs at least, light. Light I've defined as being, basically light, half the time light, half the time darkness. As the sun rotates on its axis and all the other stuff, sometimes in years longer or shorter in duration, night and day, but you've got to have, because it also says later in in Luke 17, it says there's going to be darkness, and that can be found in verse 34. I tell you, in that night there will be 2 in one bed, one will be taken and the other left. So it's describing somewhere on earth there's going to be darkness with 2 in bed, and there's also going to be light, because there's going to have to be planning and building, right? So that describes a normal day-night, 24-hour cycle, and not a darkness event. And I have the Revelation 8:7 with that first blown trumpet, of which there's only one verse. And let me quickly read that, because that's where I have the same day wrath of God occurring, just as in with Lot and Noah. When the righteous were saved, they were physically separated. That was the same day that the wicked were destroyed, right? And if we look, and that was with Noah, it was with the flood, and with Lot, it was with fire. So we're looking for either a flood or fire, and if we're focusing on Revelation, you will see that in Revelation 8 verse 7, it says, the first angel blew his trumpet, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood, and these were thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burnt up. And that's that's exactly what we're looking at with Lot. Back to Luke 17, where in verse 29 it says, "But on the day when Lot went out from Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all." Okay, so there's death by fire there. Okay, so so I'm looking at those three verses in Revelation 8, verses 5, 6, and 7, as all having to be on the same literal Jewish day. Again, a Jewish day begins shortly after sunset when 3 stars appear from until approximately 24 hours later. So during that 24-hour period, all three of these verses have to occur. Okay, that's how I'm looking at this, and it's very tight. None of the other premillennial views can say that. Okay. And then the 7th or 8th day, you'll have to listen to another video. This is with the 7th open seal, and I'm getting into Revelation 8:1 with that about a half an hour. So anyway, let's keep going. Okay, in my book, I said there are 6 premises. I've already shown, I think I've already shown 1, or did I show 2? Anyway, this is premise 3. This is one of the 2. Daniel 12:12, with it being extended from 1290 days of verse 11 to 1335. And this is a proof to support the 1335 duration versus the 1290. And it can be found in my book, pages 57 and 58 in chapter 4. This is again Beyond Pre-Wrath, End Time Prophecy. And if you look at the book, I calculate exactly 1,304.5 days. Okay, therefore 1335 days must not be selected. You see, because 1290 is not at this point or higher. And in fact, the simplest proof is right here below. Long pole in the tent is that the 1,150 days of light for priestly sacrifices, plus 150 days of darkness in Revelation 9:5, these two durations equate to 1,300 days, right? That in itself points to that the duration of the vision must be at least 1,300 days. So therefore, it excludes the interpretation of Daniel 12:11 of 1,290. 1,290 days is not 1,300 or higher. So we can exclude that interpretation. This is one of the proofs that I did this in my book, but this is pretty straightforward here. So just going to slide. Yes, I already showed the other proof. Let's see here. Oh yeah. So why is the duration of the 6th and 7th seals important? Scripture points to the persecution of the Great Tribulation to get worse near its end, which is called the Fury. We also know the following duration events. And this Fury is described in Isaiah, and I'm not sure if I can find it real quick, but it's in Isaiah, it's in my book, first book. But the Fury duration was bound in chapter 12 of my Beyond Pre-Wrath End Time Prophecy. And the rapture occurs on one of 2 days, either that 7th or 8th day after we leave the 24-hour darkness. Okay. Therefore, we can bound by dates. We can actually specify the dates when the date begins and when the date ends. So window dates, because they're during the second half of the 70th week of Daniel, right? Because the feast the Jewish feasts are celebrated every year. So there become annual windows as to when to hide. Okay, that's why this is so important. This is why it's not a trivial thing, because all of these pieces, they're basically 4 pieces. These are 2 of the pieces, the 6th and 7th seal durations, and then knowing how long the fury will last, which is, in my book I talk about, because in Scripture it says in Revelation 6 verses 9 to 11, it's talking about those who are under the altar to wait a little longer. This quote-unquote little longer is what I key on as with the Isaiah reference as to hide for a little longer. I'll look at those as being parallel events that, again, just before the Great Tribulation end, our tribulation, the tempo of the persecution against us will increase, which is called the fury. This is when Isaiah says that we need to hide in our chambers for a little while. Okay, or chambers is just another word for a house. You know, a house is made up of several rooms. You know, but so that's why if the theory is shown, if the 70th week of Daniel begins on one of the dates in my book, that Jesus returned based on the feast of the Lord, then there's a high probability that these dates, I'm saying that when we need to hide from this fury to mitigate our persecution of our faith, becomes paramount. Okay. And see, once the fury starts, we are basically within 80 days of the rapture. We've got to live through this fury. And because they're annual windows, the first year that the window happens, we may actually be hiding, and there may not actually be a fury. It could happen in the second year or possibly in the third, okay, that we may have to be hiding for basically, I think it's 52 days is what I had. And we'll probably know if it's because they'll be wanting to, there'll be those who are wicked be very persistent and wanting to and knocking at our doors to want to come in. So anyway, that's it. So hope you enjoyed it.